Hey everyone, Guy here with Datalytics. Today we're going to be going over a solution that involves picking up on a form submission and creating a task based on that form submission. For this build, we're going to be going through Plutio and using Integromat. This build typically takes probably no more than 5-10 minutes with all the testing and everything, but this video is going to be longer to explain the entire process if someone is new to it. So what we're going to be doing for this scenario is for my use case, I have a form, and on this form, say I'm a software development company or a SaaS product company, and I want to be able to send along a bug report to the company itself. I'm a customer or a client or a subscriber, and I want to send along a report of something I saw without needing to reach out to the support team, the support channel. And what I can do here is fill in my name, fill in some details of the form, say I want to upload some screenshots, describe the bug itself, set a priority. I can then send this form as a customer, client, or a user, but the company wants to be able to have that form be created as a task inside of Plutio. So what we'll see here is into the project in my demo. They would like a task to be created inside of this task group, bug reports. So how we're going to do that is build it inside of Integromat using two modules. We're going to be listening for the watch, or we're using the watch notifications module and the create task module. First, we need to set up inside of Plutio your API manager instance if you do not already have one. How to do that is go into your Plutio account, go down to settings, API manager. I have one already set up as I use it pretty frequently in my business. But if you do not have one, create a connection, name it how you'd like. Mine is like this, Integromat Forms, response create. I have a webhook sitting here, which we will create in the future in our actual scenario inside of Integromat. I have deselected all of these other endpoints to allow this specific instance of the API manager when I connect it to Plutio to listen just for this form-response.create method. That way, when I'm connected to this connection of Plutio, it only operates off of this one endpoint inside of Plutio, which can be key if you're not wanting to pick up on all of these other events inside of Plutio. So if you do not have that created, go ahead and create one. Get all the way to the step of putting in a webhook here. We're going to do that in a minute. Next, we're going to go into Integromat, create a scenario, choose Plutio, choose Plutio as your first module, scroll all the way down, hit watch notifications. If you do not have a webhook already set up, click add. Then you'll be able to go into this protocol, which adds another screen that pops out, and what they're going to ask for are these two pieces here, the client ID, the client secret. They also will ask you what you want to name it. So I have mine in here as Plutio Forms, but you can name it anything you want to. They're also going to ask you for your business subdomain. Your business subdomain, mine is white labeled, but mine is consulting. If you have a specific non-white labeled subdomain, it would be your business name .plutio.com. They need that piece before the .plutio.com. Okay, from here, you're going to add that. Make sure you copy the address to the clipboard. You can either do it with the button, or you can highlight, copy, and paste. Go back into Plutio, and in this section right here, you can put in the actual webhook that you just copied. Make sure to toggle it on. And again, this auto save, so no need to hit save or continue or publish. Next, go back into Integromat, click OK. The next thing we're going to do is add another module. Click that, click the Plutio icon, come down and select create a task right there. Now, once you've chosen your connection, it'll pull through your account's specific information. So right here, we can name whatever we'd like it to if we want it to be dynamic. If this needs to be, if you have a specific naming convention, like you do first name, so the person that submitted it first name, and then any other business information you want, you can map those dynamically. We'll get to that in a minute. You can then choose how you'd like to do the options of this mapping. So you can do it either by project and task group, or you can go project, task board, task group. What that relates to is right here in your actual project, you can go either the overall project, then by task board, which are what these are down here, and then by task group. So you can go by project, task board, task group if you have multiple of each, or project directly to task group if you only have one task board. Okay, so for me, I'm going to do this one, project, task board, and task group. As in my Plutio account, I use active tasks in the project task board. And then I also have another one for task archiving, where I'll move completed, canceled, or non-active tasks out of my active task board. So I choose that option. Then I go to choose from a list. The project ID is my demo project. The task board, I want it to be on this one, and it would be named specifically to yours. This is different from mine. And the task group, I have specifically a bug reports task group right here, bug reports. So I choose this, and this will essentially map to where I need to add the task into, because again, with Plutio, you can get very specific on where you want a task to be placed under. You can go to a different task group, to a different task board, or even to a completely different project overall. Once I do that, I'm going to assign it to a role, and then I can pick who I want it to be assigned to. I'm going to assign it to myself for testing purposes. If you have a specific color you want to label the actual task as, you can do that. You don't have to do that. If there's a task template, you can do that. Now, when it comes to these fields, you can put in the dynamic content such that there's descriptions and also an HTML, which we probably won't use in this test scenario. The due date and the start date of the task itself, and custom fields. What I've done in this form, if you notice on my form, I've got a priority field. So what I did here is I have a drop down. I've got different priorities. How does this affect the user's business? Is it a low, medium, high, or is it a bug where they can't even do anything inside of their account and it's affecting payments and clients? So they can select that. And then what I'll do is I'll actually map this field dynamically when the form pulls through. And we're going to get to that in a minute when we do some testing. So that's what you're able to do inside of this module. Click OK. If it pops red like this, don't worry. That's just a required field of the module. Typically, I'll put something in there that's placeholder, test, or actually the word placeholder, something that will allow us to move on while still saving our progress of this actual module. Click OK. Now, two things that I like to do more often than not with my form responses and anything coming from Plutio is I'm going to set up a filter between the watch notifications and create task module. What I'm going to name this is bug report form response. What we're going to set up here are two filter conditions. If you're familiar with filtering, you'll know what I'm talking about. when I get into doing this. If you're not, filtering is a way to prevent further actions after that filter from occurring if that action does not meet the action of if the action does not meet the requirements of your filter. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a method filter, and we're going to get to what that means in a second, equal to a specific piece of information. We're going to put in another one that's going to be labeled form ID, and I'll show you that here in a second. This is by default exists, so you'll need to click that and hit the drop down and go equal to, and we're going to put in here a value of the actual form. So in this space right here, put in some placeholder text, form ID equal to text. Does not need to be that, just any kind of text to put in there is fine. That way we can save our progress and retain this, come back to it here in a second when I show you what we need to actually go find. So hit OK. So now our filter is halfway set up. What we're looking for inside of your Plutio account and your form, we need to get to that specific bug report form inside of your design editor. So go to the design editor of the form. Up in the top right under actions, there'll be the drop down. Click the embed form option, and you'll see this pop up, which is where you can embed it into a website or an application or anywhere else you'd like to embed it. But what we need is this piece of data right here, right after form hyphen. This piece of data is the form ID. So copy that, control copy on a Windows or command copy, I believe, on a Mac. I'm not a Mac user. I apologize if that's incorrect. But copy that, or you can even right click and copy. X out of there. Let's go back into Integromat, into our filter. Now we need form ID is equal to, instead of text, drop that piece of information right there. Control copy for Windows users, and I believe command copy for Mac users again. Otherwise, you can then paste as plain text right here. Hit the OK button. That's what we need now. We need to go run a test version of our report, of our bug report form. I've already done this prior to recording the video, so I have a response set up already on the webhook. And what I mean by that is there's actually data sitting on that webhook that we put into Plutio earlier. One is waiting to be processed through the queue. Another tidbit for Integromat is you need to save occasionally. So we're going to save it down here. Under the controls section, there's a floppy disk icon. Save that. Scenario was saved. Okay, now to do this, we need to hit the run once button. So it'll run it, and if there's any form information sitting on the webhook, it's going to process that. Okay, so what we're going to do is on this test, we're going to hit the run once button, and when there's data sitting on the webhook that this is listening for, you're going to have this, it's not an error, but it's a warning that says there's unprocessed data on the webhook. So when you run it, it's going to pick up on and process that bundle. That's exactly what we want it to do. So hit the process existing. It's going to run, and then it's going to pop this bubble up here, and this is going to show you the output of the actual module. So what we need to do is look at two things. The method right here, form response.create, that's what we're testing right now. And then we also need to find this form ID. And where that's going to come into play is the filter. So let's X out of here. Go back into the filter. And remember, when we set up this filter, the method, we now need to put in the actual equal to value, and that's going to be form hyphen response dot create, because that's exactly what we're trying to filter for and only allow through the filter as the method, which is form response dot create, which is what we set up in our Plutio API manager instance. Next, the form ID. Remember when we pasted in this value from that embed form screen? Well, now we have the actual field to check right here. So now it's going to be filtering both on the method and then it also has to match the right form. So go into this field. It's going to pop this dynamic or usable field options from the previous module. Click the actual purple field or drag and drop, both work, and form ID. This way, it's now going to filter both on the method, which has to equal this, and it's also going to filter on the form ID equal to what we had picked up from the embed form section. As you can see in our demo, when I submitted this test form earlier, it now is going to match the form response.create, and it's also going to match the form ID when we go to do another test here in another minute or two. So from here, we got our filter set up. Now we need to go and actually map some of these value fields into the create a task module, now that we have the fields that we can use from our form. So in here, if you wanted a specific title, if you wanted something similar to the person's first name, for example, and then you wanted another piece of information, you could put that in here. I would just do, for this test, bug report from, and then I would do first name. You can do anything you want. You can make that as dynamic as you want or as static as you want. You have this data to work with. So from in here, you can go down and do your coloring if you want. You can put your description in, which you need to find the field of where you chose in your form to actually put a description or long text field. For mine, it was the second to last field. So in here, it'll be my second to last option to where I get the actual text value from that submission. Right there. You can then put a start and end date. And then down here under the bug priority custom field that I have set up in Plutio, I'm going to now put the priority right here, bug priority. So now this is going to put into that field the value that they selected right here. Hit the OK button. Perfect. Now if you go to hit this again on the run once, there's nothing going to be sitting on that webhook. So what you need to do is submit through another form response. I've already started to do that here. Please describe. Let's do another one. Let's do critical this time. Send feedback. Made that field required. Let's upload an image. We'll be going over how to attach items to tasks and other entities within Plutio in another video, possibly in another series. So stick with me on that and we'll update you later when those come about. Okay, send feedback. The form is now submitted. So we're going to go back into Integromat and wait for Integromat to pick up on the webhook data that we just sent through Plutio that Integromat now has to pick up on and wait for. So there's two ways you can do that. You can sit here in the scenario and keep hitting this run once button until you get that same pop-up that shows process the queue, or there's bundles waiting in the queue. Or you can also go to the actual webhook screen right here in webhooks. Make sure to save, because without saving it wouldn't then capture the data we put in the filter and in this module. So make sure we save. Go into webhooks. And now in here for Integromat, the webhook we're looking for is this one right here. So now we see with this icon in my account, I'm allowed to have up to 100 unprocessed bundles sitting on a webhook at any given point. For a free account, it's 10. So that's why it's a little different between yours and mine. I have a paid account, but we can see that there's unprocessed sitting on some of these webhooks. For example, I've got one here for our test. I've got a couple other webhooks that I use. So there's unprocessed ones sitting there that I can work on. So we'll go back to the scenario. Now when we go to run this, we're going to get the pop-up. It's going to do the same thing, process existing. And there we go. So now we have a good output from the webhook. You can inspect that here if you'd like, you don't have to. This one webhook entity was passed through the filter properly because they both matched the conditions. The form response method was correct and the form ID was correct that we set up earlier. So that passed. Then we can check the output bundle of the created task. So this was the inputs. These are the outputs. Now we can go back into Plutio, into our project, bug reports, and we'll see our task right there. So when we set this up in Plutio, we did a couple of things. I put in the title of the task this text that said bug report from with the colon and then a space, and then I put in dynamically the first name of the person who submitted the form, which again is pulled through right here, first name. Then I also have the bug priority custom field right here is critical. If you have things in Plutio that show that differently or that you have filtered on via Kanban boards or different filtering and grouping, you can do it that way and it'll then drop into that group just the same. Okay, so next, the only thing really else to do, aside from, again, saving as we like to do, is turning it on and then doing some more live testing inside of the form and Plutio. So turn it on here. So now the scenario is live and listening for new webhooks. Turn it off very easily. The only other thing you might want to do that's a good thing to do while we're doing development and testing is inside of Plutio, go to your responses section and delete out these two test responses. This way you'll have a fresh set of responses and fresh eyes on it for new ones that come through. You won't get confused with your test data and your live data. That's it for this solution. Again, to recap, we covered using Integromat to build the scenario. We used Plutio's API Manager settings down here in API Manager. We also then utilized inside of this the very specific or scoped endpoint selection of form response.create. And that's it. Everything else was accomplished inside of Plutio between the form submission and the task creation. We just utilized Integromat to build this scenario. All in all, even with a little bit of debugging and troubleshooting, it should take you no more than 15-20 minutes to do this. It should not take but more than just a few scenarios or scenario tests to do this and module runs. Where that comes into play is here in the dashboard. You can see your operation count. Again, if you're on a free account, that's where you'd want to keep that in mind. But if you're on a paid account like I am, we have a fairly high operations limit, so I'm not worried about that. But if I have more and more scenarios to be built, then that can also come into play. So that's why I do things based on an instant trigger like this is versus a polling or a scheduled trigger. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more how-tos and more helper and build videos in the future. Thanks. Bye.